So Dan, what do you think about getting a little energy stock exposure as opposed to just crude?
Yeah, George made some great points, and you're seeing, the general trends within the space have been fairly positive this last quarter, even though when you look at the hard numbers, year over year, they're still declining, and expectations are for Halliburton to have a pretty rough comparison year over year, once again this quarter. But that expectations, I think, has been built in. And as you mentioned, really from the last earnings announcement in October, we're seeing Halliburton up significantly off of those announcements. But I think, a couple of things, dynamics here, Oliver. So, number one, it looks like to me like this area is rolling over a little bit ahead of the market as we continue to see the trajectory of the market moving higher this first 2 weeks of 2020. It looks to me like the oil services are starting to roll over. So I think that there's actually a little bit more downside for Halliburton here before we maybe see another leg higher.
All right, so how do you sort of express that? Do you want to put on some kind of like a calendar-oriented trade, a spread, or is it just you want downside right now?
Yeah, I thought about that, and I think right now, from a trade example standpoint, I'm looking just for downside, a play back to that 50-day moving average, which is around 22.72 right now, Oliver. And I know if you look at the 50-day versus the 200-day, the general momentum trends are firmly in place for the upside. But at the same token, some of the dynamics within the market structure, certainly we're seeing rig counts moderate here, and I think that's still going to be an issue for Halliburton moving into the first half of this year, particularly due to their exposure in the United States. And some of the other dynamics, I still think that maybe it's gotten a little ahead of itself with this big runoff of the lows from October. So I'm looking at a put spread here, nearer dated as well, because you got option liquidity concerns as well. So I'm looking at a trade example of buying the 24-22 February monthly put spread. And again, it's about a 3-to-1 risk-reward ratio. It plays for a pushback down to that 50-day and possibly maybe even a test of the 200-day over the next month or so.
So Dan, I think an important distinction here, even with the bearish trade on Halliburton, because you and I talked energy yesterday in Market on Close, as crude seemed to be finding some degree of strength still within a possible uptrend since October. This is not like a big verdict on the commodity. It's more about Halliburton's problematic past in the U.S. shale patch, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, their net margins are still troubling relative to the rest of the industry, and as we talked about, as George pointed out, some of the dynamics within the market structure, Halliburton's exposure to the United States, and the general trends in the rig counts and some of the growth prospects right now. It seems like they've got a little top heavy, and if we see crude push back down to that 55 level, those lows that we saw in November, I think that's going to be another inhibitor or headwind for the service-oriented space moving into the second half of this year as well. If we see crude even lingering here around $55 to $60 a barrel, I don't know if that's enough to bring the rig count back in, up to a point where you're going to see growth.
Yeah, Dan, nice. I like it. Before we let you go, though, let's talk broad market, right? Because you're down there in the VIX pit, and we're at 12.07, 12.1 in VIX right now. That's been like a clear all-go green signal to get long VIX short stocks for the last 2 years, my man. This time too?
And there's I tell you, there's a lot of activity in February, a lot of call buying. Yesterday, I believe 100,000 Feb 22s were purchased in the VIX. So there's no question that you're seeing some large out-of-the-money call buying taking place in the February cycle. So possibly you are seeing some repositioning, but I tell you, when you look at the screens today, there's a lot of green on those screens, and the only thing that really is red is the VIX. So the market continues to find this upside momentum as we move through expiration day today.